Hello friends, and welcome once again to the Gesundheit Kitchen. My name is Hans Rufert, and this is something that we do regularly to kind of benefit gastric cancer patients and caregivers and kind of try to educate and inspire, inform, maybe entertain. And so I like to go shopping with sort of a blank slate and kind of let the market tell me what we're going to cook today. So it is asparagus season at the moment, and so those were not only looking amazing, they were also kind of cheap. So they were a good deal. So I thought, you know what, let's do something asparagus centered. They are high in vitamins A, C, and K, and also high in folate. But they're also mainly just delicious, which is a good reason to hop in on that. So with that in mind, I'm going to build together a healthy, high in protein, multi-layered nutritional salad with asparagus in the center. So unless you're growing your own asparagus, you're going to have to buy it from somewhere. And as a typical rule, you want it smaller is better. So once they get thicker than, say, a pencil, or maybe even a Sharpie, say, they start to get woody and fibrous. So if you can find the skinnier ones, they tend to be a lot more tender. And then at some point along the sort of length of the asparagus, they do tend to get fibrous towards the bottom. So the best way to kind of determine where to snap them or cut them is to take one of them in a bunch, because usually they're from the same sort of same age, same region. So you start with your two thumbs to try to bend, and if it doesn't snap there, you move down a little farther, and wherever it snaps easily, right there was the natural snap point, that's about the point where I could take all of these asparagus, and then at that same area, I could either break or cut them off at that point. So the part of the asparagus beneath there is going to be too fibrous to eat in a salad. The only thing it would really be good for is either you could make a stock and then make a soup out of it, or you can put it in your compost pile and garden with it. But you want to definitely use the more tender end of the asparagus. So I snapped all of my asparagus, and in a skillet, I just got a little bit of butter or olive oil with a tad of water. So I just got some steamy butter essentially, or steamy butter olive oil, and threw the asparagus in there, threw a lid on there just until they became tender. And you can see how much greener they are if you do that little bit of a sort of a shock, right? So I'm just kind of giving a little flash heat, turning the heat off, and you can even refrigerate them like this. They're perfect to eat like this. You can eat them raw as well, but they're very crunchy, very fibrous sometimes. And especially if you have GI issues, they're easier to digest if you just give them that quick blast of heat. They're perfect like that. You can pickle them if you want to, but for the main ingredient of a salad, I think this is going to be perfect. So I'm going to take these guys, and they look amazing. If you want to do something creative and make a tower and make little spears of asparagus, you can. But for this salad, I'm going to make them bite-sized. I think sometimes it's a very kind of Asian mentality, is that it's considered in some cultures rude for a guest to have to cut or work with their food. So if you have things already bite-sized, it's easier to eat. Again, you don't have to sit there with a knife and fork trying to break these things down. It is considered polite with asparagus. You can eat asparagus with your fingers, so that even at a fancy pinkies up dinner party, it's totally acceptable to eat asparagus with your fingers. But chopped up like that, they're fantastic. And again, since they've already been par-cooked, they're going to have that nice, tender kind of a bite to them. So the salad I want to put together is really just an assemblage, and most salads are. But I'm going to take a little bit of baby spinach and layer that kind of as my base. The stems are edible, especially when they're this size, but just for aesthetics, and again, so you don't have to do too much knife and fork, I'm going to remove the stems, and then some of the bigger leaves you can just kind of pop in half. Going to take some quinoa, which is considered a superfood. It really is one of my favorite foods. It's high in protein, easy to digest. Now I should mention this is cooked quinoa. I did forget to mention that at one point, and someone bought quinoa and sprinkled the rock hard seeds on a salad. I'm surprised they didn't send me the dental bill, but they later complained that it was just a bit too crunchy, too chewy. So this is ABC quinoa, meaning already been cooked, and then chilled. So this is cold quinoa ready to eat. I tend to have quinoa in the fridge at all times cooked. So things like millet, quinoa, spelt, amaranth, even rice. It's great to have some of that in the fridge. ready to go. So when you are hungry, when you feel like you can sit down to a meal, because honestly, you don't always feel hungry, or if it takes an hour or 45 minutes to make a grain, by the time it's ready, you might not be as hungry as you were when you started this journey. So I tend to like to have a lot of those things on the ready. I've got these are cannellini beans, which is basically like a white navy bean. Sounds like an oxymoron, a white navy bean. But anyway, those are high in protein as well, loads of fiber. We talk a lot about prebiotics and probiotics. We're going to introduce some probiotics in the salad dressing, but these would provide the prebiotic. And I always like to think of it as the probiotics are like the soldiers that do all the work in your gut, and the prebiotics are what feed those soldiers. So the dietary fiber in there is fantastic in the beans. Now, let's make a quick salad dressing, and then we're going to layer all this together. So for the salad dressing, I'm going to do a lemon yogurt salad dressing. Now, I've grilled some lemons, and these were just honestly some lemons that I had zested for another dish and kept them in the fridge. And then for this dish, I just cut them in half and I seared them in a hot skillet, kind of caramelized the outside. But that heat also loosens up all of the excess juice that's in there as well. So you get a lot more juice out by doing that. Plus you get that kind of nice caramelization, a little char kind of flavor going on. So for the salad dressing, I'm taking about a half a cup, and I rarely ever measure anything, but it's about a half a cup of yogurt. And then right in front of me, I've got a fourth a cup each. Olive oil is going in there as well. And a good light vinegar. In this case, I'm using a white balsamic. Rice vinegar would work. Apple cider vinegar, it could be, it's a little astringent. White wine vinegar would be fine for that. So though that's the base there, that's the kind of the foundation. And because I tend to put garlic in everything, this is going to be about the equivalent of a clove of garlic minced. So that's going to go in there as well. And then I've got a pinch of salt and pepper, and all of that, of course, you can adjust. If you have an empty mason jar or a little salad shaker, you can shake that up. Mine is in the wash, so we're going to do this hand style here. And this kind of dressing will last a month under refrigeration. So I'm just making a small amount right now. You can upscale this if you want to do a whole cup of yogurt. Obviously, you would double the amount of oil and vinegar. And then to this, I'm going to add the juice and some of the pulp of 2 of these lemons. So again, I've par grilled these, and I'm going to take, and they're already nice and squishy, I'm going to take a fork and really wrench out all of that good juice out of there. There's a seed that can stay behind. And if you get a seed or 2 in there, obviously you can just remove them later. But I get not only the liquid, I like to take some of that kind of pulp in there as well. So this is essentially the juice of 1 whole lemon. You don't have to grill it. It's not a requirement. But if you have an extra second, if you have a hot pan, it just does some of the work for you. It makes it kind of squishy, and it makes it easy to get all of that good stuff out of there. So again, mix this up. And a shaker would be perfectly fine, or even a blender if you're making a large batch of this. But the yogurt has 4 different probiotics in there, depending on which yogurt you use. The particular one I have has 4 different strains of probiotic in there. And so it's a lemon yogurt to start with. You could use a plain yogurt if you can't find lemon yogurt. But I've really got the citrus flavors happening in here with the grilled lemon and the lemon flavored yogurt. All right, so now comes on our asparagus. Put these guys around here. And I have enough, obviously, to make several salads. And then I'm going to take our lemon yogurt salad dressing and put this nice and round. Now, when I make salad dressings, if you've ever seen me make them before, I typically make them a little more tart than the average person. So it's better to start with less dressing and then add more as you need it. But I like for a dressing to actually kind of kick you on the side of the head, like seriously tart dressing, so you don't need as much. Because oftentimes that's where a lot of the fat and calories are in the salad dressing. So sometimes if it's too greasy, too oily, it can be a little rough on your system. So I'd rather have more of the vinegar citrus pop and focus on that flavor rather than the oil. So it's a very bright vinaigrette. So I have some smoked salmon, and this is actually a warm smoked salmon. This is totally optional, but if you don't have smoked salmon, you could also use some sardines, or you could use kippers or herring, because those omega-3s and those fatty kind of seafood are really good. So I don't eat a lot of meat, but man, I do eat some fish, and I love these kind of fattier fish like salmon and mackerel. So there's some salmon, as much as little as you like. And then typically when the asparagus is in season, so are strawberries. So I didn't want to add strawberries into the salad necessarily. Sometimes I think less is more. So when you go into a store and you get almost this overwhelming sensation, that looks good and that looks good. And sometimes the trick is to exercise a little bit of a refrain, or restraint, I should say, so that you're not overloading your palate. Your brain can only identify so many flavors at once, and if you think of each flavor almost like a crayon, if you took all of those crayons out of a box and tried to paint with them, eventually it would look sort of like mud. So the trick is to kind of pick some singular flavors out and focus on those. So rather than including the strawberry kind of mixed into the salad, I'm going to use these kind of like you would use like a little side. This would be almost like the dessert when I finish the salad. These are going to be my little sweet bites at the end that I can go to, and it becomes a garnish. It adds a lot of color to the plate, but also that sweet flavor at the end is a nice little addition. As I said, seasonally, they are typical, they're garden, friends. They tend to be ready at the same time or around the same time. We are lucky in this day and age that you can pretty much get asparagus and strawberries year-round. Obviously, they're going to be the imported ones. Might not be as amazing and flavorful as the ones that you would get in season, but they're still really good. Last little bit of this is I had some lemon balm growing in my garden, and if you ever grow mint, lemon balm and mint are first cousins, and they become a weed. So someone who doesn't have herbs, they're always like, oh, that's so fancy, but once you have them, you always have them. So I'm going to take lemon balm, which, as the name implies, has a very lemony kick to it, which goes in theme. And I'm just going to do a quick, what's called chiffonade. Let me make a little space here so you can see what I'm doing. Roll this up and just kind of cut this into ribbons. I'll take those ribbons then and go around. And they are wonderful. As you bite into the salad, you have those little bites of lemoniness to go with the lemon dressing. So that is a fantastic sort of spring themed, right? It doesn't matter what time of year if you're making this, but in the midst of spring, to me, that is celebratory and has all of those flavors. I'll throw this guy on here for a little color too, a little more squeeze of lemon if you'd like. So there is our asparagus themed, spring themed salad. Anytime you guys have questions, if there's anything you want to learn about, drop us an email, let us know. I don't know what you don't know. So I love being able to spend time in the kitchen talking about easy to digest foods that make sense for really any human, but particularly those of us who are dealing with GI issues. So thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time here in the Gesundheit Kitchen. Be well.